Hey everyone, and welcome back to another creative session here at Adobe. We're doing the weekly challenge. This is the third one I've done this month, and excited to see some familiar faces in the chat. Welcome back, Clarissa Keys. I know you've been here a bunch. Hello everyone. Please feel free to join along on today's challenge. The starter files are in the description below, both on YouTube and Behance. And also be sure to subscribe, hit the subscribe button on YouTube, and follow over at Adobe Live on Instagram. Let's go ahead and dive in and take a look at what we're going to be working with today. Like I said, be sure to get your starter files in the description below, and we're going to be playing in After Effects. So what we're going to be doing is creating a layered kind of camera movement with a vector files from Adobe Illustrator. So we're going to talk about just how do you get kind of, some fun wiggly movements, and then also all this parallax here in the trees. So without spending too long talking about what we're going to do, let's go ahead and dive in. So the first thing we're going to do is, if you open your starter files, you should have the sunrise landscape. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. It's an Illustrator file. And since we're focusing on motion for this section, we won't be spending too much time in here, but I just want to call attention to what exactly this is. So we have all these layers here. You can find your own Illustrator file with vector layers, or you can also generate vectors here, kind of a new beta feature in Illustrator. But essentially all we're doing is finding some layers here with backgrounds and things that we can layer. And the most important thing is we want to organize them from the most foreground object to the background. So you can see here I've labeled them, 001 to 18, with the farthest away one being our background sky, and up close we kind of have these birds here, and everything's on individual layers. So by doing this, you have your path files or your objects, and they are inside of layers here, which you would basically just make a new layer. Let's see, let's move us over here. So we'd make a new layer, call it what you'd like, and that will translate over to After Effects when we get there. So you would go through, organize all your layers, and then from there, we hop over into After Effects. So here we are in After Effects. Let's start from scratch just so you see how we run the process. And all right, so we got a new project here. The first thing we're going to do is bring in our Illustrator file. So there's a couple different things we can do when you bring in the Illustrator file. It's going to ask you the import kind, and you have footage or composition. If you're to do footage, it would bring in a single layer, like everything all baked together on one layer, which isn't what we want. Instead, you're going to choose composition, and that will bring in all of those individual layers from Illustrator. We can choose layer size or document size, and for our needs today, we're going to go with layer size, and I'll show you how we can work with that. All right, so what did that do? It made a composition here, and we have all of our layers right here. So what do? Let's open this up. And the first thing we're going to do is we see these are all of our layers. Nothing's happening. Everything's flat. And the first thing we're going to do is confirm that, yes, all of our layers are in order here. Our birds are going to be the first things we want up front. And then we have our background and that sort of stuff going on further down the row. But we need to make all of these 3D. So I select all of them, and I can hit this button. Alternatively, we could just click, hold, and drag, and just turn these all to a 3D layer. So nothing really happened. It looks the same, but we do get this button over here in the corner that allows us to change to 2 views. And that opens up another window. If we click in this window area, we're going to see this is the window we have selected by these blue icons, and we can change from whatever view we want. In this case, we want the top view. And this doesn't make sense yet because all of our layers are in the exact same Z space. If we hit the P for position, we can see that here's our X and Y, and the Z space is all set at 0 for all of these. So what we need to do is distribute these in 3D space, but also not move individual layers. So the traditional way of doing this is, let's say our cloud layer here, you would take it, push it back, bring it forward. But the problem with that is it changes the actual size and relativeness of the like where it is in the original layer, and then you have to rescale it, reposition it, it's just kind of a messy way to do things. So I'm going to show you another faster way to do it. How does that sound? Keys, so sorry to see you got to go, but thanks for joining in. And if anyone has questions along the way, be sure to throw those in and I'll try to get to them. So first thing we need to do is create a new camera. This is all fine, standard settings. So we have our camera here. I'm going to go back to my two views so we can see what's going on. We have our top view here. We have our camera, and we're going to create a new null object. So I'm right clicking in this gray space, or you can come up to Layer, New, Null. And basically I'm going to hit the return key or enter and just call this distribution layer. So all we're going to do is use this layer to set the positioning and the scaling of all the other layers. And we're going to use it as a parent so that whenever you parent something to that layer, it's going to inherit those properties. And then we're going to strategically unparent it so it keeps those properties in a particular position. All right, so let's do that. So the first thing we're going to need to do is let's grab both of these and hit P. And we need our distribution layer for this to work. We need it to be in the exact same position as our camera. So if you look right here, if I click this, you see our distribution layer is here. And first we actually need to make it 3D. So click the 3D button. So it's right here and our camera is here. So I'm going to grab the position of my camera and I'm going to hit Control C. We're going to copy it. So Control C and then come to the position of our distribution layer and Control V. And boom, you can see, I'm going to undo and redo that. You see our null layer that's selected here moves to exactly where our camera's at, which makes sense. All right, so that's all we need to do there. Let's kind of put this camera up top because we're not going to need it for a few minutes. All right, so I'm going to hit S on our distribution layer to bring up the scale. And I will try to explain this as best as possible, but imagine here we have our three birds, and then we have our clouds are kind of on the same plane, and we're working our way backwards to the trees, the mountains, and the farthest away background, the sun, that sort of stuff. So if we look at our top view here, we want to distribute that so it kind of looks that way, and we're going to push out these layers. So the birds, they're pretty close up, so I'm going to leave them where they're at. And what I'm going to do is grab the cloud all the way to the background, and we're going to take all these and we're just going to parent it to the distribution layer. So this won't make sense immediately, but stay with me. So what we're going to do is we're going to move these layers by controlling the scale on this distribution layer. So let's say everything, the cloud to the background, we want to push backwards. So we're going to take this scale and we're going to make it like 150. So we can see here, if we zoom out, we have our clouds right here, and we have all of our other layers right here. Now that's fine. Maybe we deselect this cloud, leave it there, and then all the other layers are going to be affected and we push it to like 180. And we're starting to distribute these layers in 3D space. And notice nothing is changing over here. So it's keeping that exact same positioning as what our original image looked like, but we're changing it in 3D space so that when we put a camera, it'll work. All right, so clouds are moved. Now this is the parent, and we're basically just turning this off because once we move it, we don't need it anymore. So we have our foreground sky streaks. Those are all pretty similar. So all of these are moving together again, and we can move that to maybe 250. And you see this continues to go backwards, and we're distributing these layers, but everything looks the same on the right side, which is exactly what we want. So let's maybe take off two of those. We can put another streak here, and we're just going to continue down. We can do 280 and then turn this one off. Hopefully this makes sense. If you have questions on this, please feel free to ask in the chat. I am keeping an eye on that. So now we're at our trees. Those are a little bit further back. Maybe we do like 300. And then we can space out the trees a bit. So next set of trees and below, we're going to do maybe 350. Turn this one off. And we're just going to go through and do it with all of these layers, 400. So basically what's happening is it's inheriting the properties of this layer here and positioning it in 3D space and keeping things exactly where they should be. So we can say 450, and I'm just going to continue through these pretty quick. Now we get to our mountains. Those are probably going to be a little bit further back, so maybe we jump it up to like 600. And then you start to get a visual representation here of all these layers. And I'm holding the middle mouse button here to move this camera view around. We see all these layers and they're being positioned here. The mountains are a little bit further away, trees are closer together. That makes sense. Maybe the next set of mountains is 650. And then finally we get to the sun and the layers below that. We're moving these all at the same time. Maybe we jump it up to 800. Sun's a little further away, so it's way back here. And finally, we can get the background layers, and maybe these are like, 900. These are probably about the same, that's fine. And then the background sky, we'll just put that at 1,000. So now you see we have all of our layers distributed here, and over here, everything looks exactly the same. So what did that do? Well, we have our camera, and I always recommend not necessarily animating from the camera directly. I like to create a null object that kind of acts as a rig for the camera, just makes it easier to manipulate. If you see here, if we were to take this camera, just as a quick example, and I hit the P for position, if I try to move the X or Y, this is gonna move, but look what happens. It actually rotates around this point right here, this point of interest. And that's not exactly what we'd want. We'd want it more to move side to side as it does here with the point of interest. Now, the best way to do this just for future ease is to create that kind of camera rig. So we're gonna right click on our camera, go to camera, and create orbit null. All right, so this distribution layer, nothing is linked, or we can unlink this here. Nothing's linked to it anymore. We could actually just delete it if we needed to. We no longer need it. It's basically was just used to quickly layer things in 3D space. Now we're going to focus on this camera orbit null, and then let's see, I want to maybe change, if I toggle down on the camera, the zoom here. So we'll start, actually let's go to the end. So we'll finish maybe, let's do the 7-second mark. So we'll hit the stopwatch and set a keyframe. And then that's all we need for the camera right now. I'm going to hit the U key so that only the U key on the keyboard is, I call it the Uber key. I don't know what the official term is, but if you hit the U key, it just brings up any asset that it has been keyframed. And if you double tap it, it brings up assets that have been changed. So U and hitting U twice very quickly. So we hit U, we can see our keyframed here. Now, our actual camera rig here, we're gonna animate the P for position, and then we can have some fun and maybe we do the X and the Y rotation. And you can see we're getting these keyframes here. I'm gonna hit U again here so we have all of them on the same screen so we can see what's happening. So let's say we want to finish at this final camera movement. We're going to grab these keyframes. I'm just gonna ease these, right click and go to ease out, or sorry, ease in. So we're easing into these keyframes. So that's gonna kind of slow your camera movement down until it comes to a stop a little more smoothly as opposed to just like stepping on the brakes and slamming. Now we need to go to our start. So bring our timeline head back to the start, and let's maybe start zoomed in. So I can take the Z position here and we can zoom in a bit, and we see our camera here is all moving. And we can actually just go to one view so we can see what we're doing a little better. So we can start zoomed in, so it's gonna pull back, and then maybe our zoom on here is way zoomed in. I don't know, you have some fun with it. This is where you get to play around and make it part of the creative challenge. We could maybe move this down a little bit. So we kind of start in the trees, and maybe it's over to the left. So something like that maybe, and then maybe you just wanna like change this rotation to look at the sun a bit more. I don't know, have some fun with it. What do you guys think? What do we think? All right, so let's see what we have going on with, remember, we've only animated our camera or camera rig, and then all these layers haven't moved. We've just set them in time. So we're not actually keyframing the layers. This is done with a camera. Let's take a look at what it looks like. So we have all kinds of parallax happening here. The trees are moving at different speeds. It's looking pretty good. Not too bad. Let's see this full screen. Yeah, so our trees are moving at different speeds, the clouds are coming in. How could we make this better? Perhaps we can, we could even, once this comes to a stop, maybe the clouds are still moving, so we animate the clouds. We can animate the birds flying across, or maybe the trees blowing in the wind. So that's kind of the basics of how you would layer this out, and we have a pretty cool movement already. Let's see, we got about 10 minutes left. Let's see what we can get through. So really quickly, let's call that done for the camera move. That's our main camera move. Now let's play with the birds. Actually, let's play with the clouds first. We can take those quickly, hit the P key for position. We'll grab both of them. We'll do them at the same time. And let's say maybe they start in this position. We hit that keyframe, and I'm just going to drag it to the beginning. And maybe by the end, we have them moving to the right. So again, I'm just going to grab both of these and drag them to the right a bit. And then we could maybe on one of them, maybe it doesn't move quite as quick or moves up a little bit, just to give it a little variation. And since this will be going for the whole animation, we can just grab this keyframe and bring it all the way to the end. So now if we click away, what do we got here? So when the camera stops moving, we should see our clouds are kind of still hanging out and blowing in the wind a little bit. And they are. It's very subtle, but that's good because they're not moving too hard. It's not that windy. So let's play with our birds. So we can grab the same thing, hit the P key for position, and let's set a keyframe on all these. We can move this to wherever we want. And so maybe at the beginning, it starts right where they're at. So we drag those to the beginning, and then by the end, maybe they are flying this direction. And we can also, stagger them a little bit. One goes down, maybe one's not quite as fast. So have some fun with it. We'll see what we can do here. All right, so really quickly, so we're playing with basic keyframing here. We have our basic camera movement, and we're just kind of bringing more life to the scene. So now our birds are moving, but our birds are kind of they're just hovering in the air here. They're not really actually flying. And I want to see them fly. So I want to see them flap their wings. So what's something else we can do to really kind of add to that so they're not just soaring, so to speak? So we got 8 minutes left. Let's see what we can do. We'll do it on one bird. So let's grab this guy. I'm going to zoom in here. And we're going to use the puppet tool. I love that name. It's my favorite name for a tool, the puppet tool. So we're going to grab this little thumbtack guy up here, and we're going to add a kind of an anchor right in the middle. And then we'll zoom in and we'll add another one, maybe halfway through the wing on this side, and then the very tips of the wing. So what's happening? Again, let's hit that U key on the keyboard, U, and it's going to bring up our keyframe properties and hide everything else, which makes it nice to see what's going on. So we have these keyframes we just placed. So this last one was our first anchor, and then the other two are for the wings, which, let's see here, don't need this position, so we just need these ones here. Just these ones. Okay, so what we're going to do, let's move those over here just for timing's sake. And let's do like maybe 10 frames. So I'm going to hit page down on the keyboard 10 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And we can hit this key diamond right here. It's going to add another set. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Add another set. So now we have 3 sets of keyframes. Let's come back to this middle set. And you can hit the arrow keys here. Back to the middle set. And what we're going to do is we're going to grab this end one, the middle one. So these outer wing parts, outer and inner wing parts, but not the anchor. And let's just say right here, it flaps downward. And we can hold shift and drag it down. Ooh, look at that. We got flying birds. And then to add a little bit more, maybe we just take this outer point here and bring it in and down a bit more. And in and down, whatever looks good. I'm going to highlight all of these, and we're going to easy ease them. So right click on the keyframe and easy ease. That's going to make the movement a little smoother. Look at that. We got a bird flap. All right, so that's cool. We have our flap, but if we watch the whole thing, we're gonna see he's not flapping, and then, oh, he gets one flap in. So that's kind of cool, Alex, but it doesn't really look super great. So what we can do here, if you Alt click, so hold the Alt button and click on this stopwatch. Now there's a little expression here, and don't be afraid of expressions. We're gonna start super basic. We're just gonna do loop. So you type loop, you see loop out. We're gonna double click that. And then here we're gonna put a quote, and we're gonna say ping pong. And that's gonna ping pong these keyframes back and forth. So as soon as it finishes, it's gonna go back the other way and continue on. So let's copy that, and we're gonna apply that. Same thing, Alt click, paste, Alt click, paste. And our last two, and this one. So now we should have this ping pong effect, and I'm gonna grab these keyframes, and this will continue these keyframes throughout the entire composition. So we can bring this over here. How are we doing here? Let's take a look up at the chat. Hi, Robert. Joshua, good to see you. I never feel comfortable using the puppet tool. You know, it's got hit and misses, but it can do some really cool stuff. There are some nuances when you have rasterized layers in 3D. It can be a little tricky. So coming back to our project, because we're almost out of time, we got 5 minutes or so. We have this loop out with these keys going for our wing flap. So now when we play this back, let's center this so you guys can see. When our bird comes in, one of them should be flapping his wings and flying if we did this right. Look at that. So now we just have these keyframes are continuously looping. So it looks like our bird is flying. And we could do this and retime this however we want for the other two birds or for whatever we really want here. And then let's see if we got enough time here. Hey there, Pitor. Hopefully I said your name right. Didn't know there was a puppet tool in AE. Yes, puppet tool up here, this little thumbtack, it's got all kinds of cool symbols and everything in here for different uses, but play around with it. So we have our bird flying. Now, what's something else we could do? We could have the trees waving back and forth, so let's maybe just really quickly, since we got a couple minutes left, download the project file, so maybe I give this practice. Yes, Joshua, please do. You should be able to pop open the project, and if you follow along here, you could do it with any layer you want, any asset you want, that is. So let's see, we can do the same thing with our trees. Let's grab our puppet tool, and we'll just solo this layer for a minute. That's what this button here is, so we only see that layer. Have our puppet tool, and what we could do is we could just, put the tips of the trees is what we're gonna animate. So maybe we grab just a couple of them, maybe like here and here. So we're gonna do a few here. We don't need to do all of them. So those are gonna be our tips that kind of sway back and forth, and then we'll set our anchors. So that was our last keyframe, and we can go just set some bottom ones so not everything is moving. And the more anchors you set, the better you can make this look. We're doing it pretty quick right now. We got a few minutes left. All right, so let's grab this one, this one, this one. I'm holding the shift button to select these. And we're just gonna grab the tops, and then we can add, so that's puppet pin 8. So 9 through 16 are the anchors we set, these bottom ones. We don't really need those, so we can unkeyframe those and just hide them. So we have these here. So let's take these, we'll grab these and just move them, hold shift, and we can just move it a bit to the left, then maybe come forward, move it a bit to the right, and this could be way too much, could be way too little, but you see everything kind of wiggles around, makes it more fun. Now let's spread this out, and before we do that, again, I'm holding the shift key and then selecting all these, and let's right click on them, and let's just do easy ease to smooth it out. And then we'll have one at the very start. And we should see some waviness here. It's a little slow, so maybe we go a little faster. Bring these closer together. All right, so it's kind of waving over to the right, and then it stops. So what we need to do to keep it going is Alt click on the stopwatch. And since we had it copied before, we just paste it again. Loop out, quotation marks, ping pong. That's the secret. All right, we're gonna do that on these ones here. Alt click, And we're just gonna do that to each of the puppet tools that we animated here. And that should be, oh, one more. All right, so now we have that loop out effect. Once this keyframe stops, it'll go back to the first and just kind of ping pong back and forth. What do you guys think? Never ending rabbit hole. Yes, it is. All right, so here we are. We are in the closing minute here. Let's see what we got. All right, so let's make this bigger. Play it back. So do we have some tree movement? Yes, we do. We have the parallax. We have our clouds moving, and we have one of our birds flapping its wings, and the other birds are soaring in the wind. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Let me know if you have any questions, and let me know what you thought. Is this new? It sounded like the puppet tool might be new for some people, but I had a great time going through this with you guys. I'm glad we got through the project here. And be sure to download the project files and have some fun with this yourself. Maybe you want to animate some other things. Maybe the mountains are growing, I don't know. But have some fun with it. Thank you so much for joining in, and we'll see you next time.